In 1818, the residents of New South Wales, Australia, found themselves haunted by a mysterious creature known as Bunya. For decades, this terrifying beast has driven fear into the hearts and minds of Australians, and many have tried to dissect this legend and discover the truth. It all started one breezy afternoon in 1818, when the people of New South Wales ran to the nearest police station to make a report. They had just seen a terrifying beast that they described as having a round head, a manatee-like face, and a body with tusks and a long neck. Those who witnessed the monster said that it let out howls and roars and emerged from the swamp and rivers nearby. The name of the beast comes from the Aboriginal word that's close to devil or evil spirit in English. Rumors quickly began to spread that the Bunya had an appetite for women and children, and families began to keep a closer eye on their loved ones. Over the years, there have been several supposed sightings of the creature, with each account giving varied details. In one account, the Bunya was described as being as big as a horse with feathers on its back. Another said that the Bunya was small and dog-like with flippers and fangs. So far, there have been no credible sightings or pieces of evidence to suggest that the Bunya is real. While it remains alive and well in Australian folklore, scientists are yet to find the creature for themselves. Number 9. Born in 1823, Ramalinga Swami was the fifth addition to his family. The family lived a humble life in India, and from an early age, it was clear that there was something different about Ramalinga. He showed a keen interest in his religion, and by his teenage years, he'd been visited by the spirit of Lord Murugan, the lord of the Tamil people. Ramalinga told his family that the spirit of this lord took him on a path of enlightenment and wisdom, and he began to write poetry. Ramalinga continued to meditate and write poetry, and before long, he became one of the most infamous and influential Tamil poets. He also welcomed people into a secular hall of wisdom, where he would read poetry and share his wisdom and the wisdom of the gods who communicated with him. Then on January 30th, 1874, an event occurred that would put Ramalinga in the history books forever. And it wasn't because of his extensive works. Months earlier, Ramalinga had delivered what would be his final lecture. After this, he stopped appearing publicly and told followers that meditation was the key to their problems. On January 30th, Ramalinga entered a room in his home and told his followers to lock the door. He requested that nobody ever open the door again, telling them that he would be gone if they tried to find him in the room. His followers did as he asked, and it wasn't until late 1874 that the authorities finally intervened. The room had been completely locked and sealed, and there was no way of getting in or out without a key. When the authorities stormed the home, they found no sign of Ramalinga. There was no body, and nothing in the locked room had been disturbed. Experts still question how Ramalinga disappeared from a locked room to this day. Number 8. Hidden deep in the Lingyun Mountains lies the Leshan Buddha. People in China have believed that this Buddha statue possesses magical powers for centuries. According to scientists, the 71-meter-tall Buddha statue can be dated as far back as the 18th century. Many scientists are impressed at how people in the 21st century are worshipping at spots their ancestors used hundreds of years ago. For context, the Buddha statue is as tall as the Statue of Liberty, and much like this famous US attraction, the Buddha receives hundreds of guests each year. To get to the statue, you must climb Lingyun Mountain and head to Chifeng Peak. Once there, you must navigate the rocky landscape until you reach the junction where the red sandstone structure was carved into the hill. Those who visited the impressive statue are often seeking guidance and wisdom. It's recently been revealed that the hand-carved structure has an intricate drainage system that allows water to flow freely through the structure without getting damaged. The rumors of the statue's magical powers came about shortly after it was completed. Hai Tong, the Buddhist monk who commissioned the statue, believed it would help watch over sailors in their travels. Before the Buddha was there, many ships sank and countless were lost at sea. However, once the Buddha had been placed at the intersection of the rivers, the waters instantly calmed and the sailors were now safe. The rumors have persisted for centuries, and now people visit the spot seeking enlightenment and healing. There's no scientific evidence to prove that the Buddha statue has healing powers, and it's believed that the waters calmed because so much rock and rubble had been placed into them following the structure's construction. Number 7. The mystery of the Bermuda Triangle has persisted for many years, and countless experts have tried to get to the bottom of this mystery. While there are many famous cases and stories of missing ships, planes, and people, other stories are often overlooked and forgotten. In 1878, the HMS Juno was renamed the HMS Atalanta. Serving in the British Navy, the ship had been around the world, controlling the empire. By 1880, it had changed its name and had a fresh outlook. According to reporters in 1880, the HMS Atalanta was being used as a training vessel for the Royal Navy in the waters close to the Bermuda Triangle. The ship and her crew traveled all the way from Falmouth, England, and everyone aboard was excited about the trip, but the friends and loved ones of those on board never heard from them again. When the boat failed to return to its home dock and no contact could be made, the Royal Navy sent out several ships, but there was no sign of HMS Atalanta. Many believed that the ship got caught up in a storm, causing it to capsize and send its crew plunging into the below waters. So far, no evidence has been uncovered, and what truly happened to the HMS Atalanta remains a mystery. As it disappeared in or near the Bermuda Triangle, many have written it off as yet another victim of this bizarre and unexplainable phenomenon. Number 6. Malden Island, also once known as Independence Island, is a tiny atoll in the Pacific Ocean. It's one of 32 islands and atolls that make up the country of Kiribati, a small nation with less than 130,000 residents. This atoll is around 4,000 miles from the nearest civilization, and it's been uninhabited for many centuries. In the 1950s, the atoll was used by the British as a nuclear weapons testing zone. The island was first discovered in 1825, and when Westerners landed on its shores, they came across something very bizarre. While Malden Island is uninhabited, scientists came across 40 large stone temples across the island. The temples bear a resemblance to other Polynesian temples from surrounding countries. Despite these ruins having been studied since 1825, scientists still need to uncover who built them and why. The island is extremely isolated, and scientists are now considering whether there's a lost civilization or a tribe behind these structures. Number 5. In the 1700s, French pirate Oliver Levasseur and his crew terrorized the seven seas. Oliver had a comfortable upbringing and was even well educated, which surprised those who knew him as a pirate. In 1717, Oliver created his own gang of pirates and pledged to plunder as much loot as possible. For the next few years, Oliver and his crew scoured the Atlantic coast, looking for any ship, no matter where they hailed from. In 1721, Oliver and his group of over 750 pirates came across a Portuguese ship docked off the Madagascar coast. According to the BBC, the ship had been flying British colors, which was enough reason for Oliver and his crew to strike. The 250 men that Oliver took with him heavily outnumbered the men aboard the ship, and within hours they declared victory. When they began to rummage through the boat, they came across a gold mine, quite literally. It's said that each pirate received 42 diamonds and 5,000 gold coins, with Oliver and the highest-ranking members taking a more significant cut. After undertaking their largest robbery, the group broke into smaller crews, and Oliver disappeared into the ocean on a boat. He was now one of the most wanted pirates in the world, and it would take authorities until 1730 to finally capture him. Shortly before he was taken to meet his maker, he threw a piece of parchment that contained a cipher and shouted, "My treasure for he who can understand." Since that day, people have been desperately trying to decode the 17-line cryptogram and uncover the estimated 130 million pounds of riches of Oliver Levasseur. Many people have tried and failed, and the exact location of his treasure remains unknown. The parchment paper was determined to have been from the 18th century, adding to the puzzle's authenticity. Some have speculated that the treasure does not exist, and that Oliver wanted to send people on a wild goose chase one last time. Number 4. In the early 1910s and 1920s, Alfred Lowenstein was one of the wealthiest men on the planet. Born in Brussels, Belgium, Alfred had a great start in life and quickly joined the family trade of banking. Careful investments quickly made Alfred a millionaire, and he began branching out, looking for more ways to make money. One of these ways was to set up electrical companies in third world or developing countries. Alfred made a fortune and helped the progression of his fellow man. Alfred Lowenstein should have gone down in the history books for his ability to do business and predict markets, but instead, he's gone down in a much more bizarre way. On July 4th, 1928, Alfred Lowenstein boarded his private plane in Croydon, England, bound for Belgium. Alfred was aboard with 6 others, including the pilot and the mechanic, and Alfred chatted with his staff as the plane took off into the skies. The July afternoon weather was noted as unremarkable, with clear skies and good flying conditions. Alfred excused himself as the plane began to fly over the English Channel and headed to the bathroom. When 10 minutes had passed and Alfred still had not returned from the toilet, those on board grew concerned. A member of Alfred's staff went to the back of the plane where the toilet was situated and discovered a horrific sight. The bathroom was located next to an exit door that operated on a spring-loaded latch and required the strength of 2 men to open. But when Alfred's staff checked, this door was flapping in the wind. There was no sign of Alfred in the bathroom, and it became clear to all of those on board that something tragic had occurred. The pilot was informed of Alfred's disappearance and opted to land on a beach in Dunkirk rather than an airfield nearby. When the plane landed, a complete aircraft inspection was carried out, and it was determined that Alfred had accidentally opened the wrong door. But Alfred's wife didn't believe this. On July 19th, Alfred's body was discovered, and an autopsy revealed traces of alcohol in his system. Alfred's traumatized wife informed the coroner that he didn't drink alcohol, further fueling her belief that this was more than a tragic accident. The exit door would have required the strength of 2 men to open it while the plane was in motion, but according to those on board, Alfred left for the bathroom alone. There have been many theories over the years, but so far, nobody has been able to prove what happened to Alfred was anything more than a tragic accident. Number 3. The island of Crete in Greece is home to some of the world's most influential historical figures. The Minoans, who lived from 3500 BC to 1100 BC in the Bronze Age, have left behind many artifacts showing historians how our ancestors lived. In 1500 BC, for reasons still unknown to this day, the ancient Minoans changed their language style completely, moving over to what's called Linear B. Experts know that Linear B was used in the ancient Greek language. They're still trying to figure out what caused this sudden change. With some artifacts being written in Linear B, there are also some written in Linear A, and this is where the mystery occurs. Linear A has been found on discs, tablets, and pots, but experts have yet to learn how to decode it. The most famous example of the ancient Minoan language can be seen on the Festus disc, a relic that contains 45 signs. So far, experts have uncovered that there are around 80 signs that make up syllables and can be formed into words, but there's yet to be any luck in deciphering these. One linguist has dedicated his career to uncovering the mysteries held by the Festus disc. According to him, the puzzle is 99% solved, although there has been criticism from other academics. He believes the disc is a written devotion to the pregnant goddess. There are currently 3 words that Dr. Owens has failed to decipher, casting a shadow of doubt and mystery over the bizarre Minoan language. Number 2. Stretching from Berkeley to San Jose, the Berkeley Walls are one of California's most enduring mysteries. It's a mystery that's not often discussed, and experts are still trying to figure out who built these walls and why. The wall is composed of rocks and boulders, measuring around 5 feet high. Some of the stones used are found in what are considered inaccessible places. The height of these rocks suggests to experts that it was not intended to keep people out or in. So what's their purpose? Historical records showed that the mysterious wall was already there when the Spanish colonists landed in California. Some articles also state that the walls had been there when other groups turned up. Some experts have suggested that an earthquake occurred in the area, and that this long stone structure was created to appease the gods. Others have speculated that these formations were to guide aliens straight to us, but this theory holds little to no weight. Experts cannot agree with one another, and the mystery of the Berkeley walls remains unsolved. Number 1. On October 10, 1980, 29-year-old Lamont Young and his assistant were tasked with surveying the Bermuda fields near Sydney, Australia. At the time, the country was in the middle of a gold rush, and there was a frenzy of people trying to be the first to discover and claim gold mines. While only 29, Lamont Young had made a name for himself and was regarded as one of the best prospectors. On October 10th, Lamont and his assistant, Max, headed out to the field by boat. The two also took with them 3 men to aid in their investigation, but the men would never return. The gold prospectors became worried when the group failed to return that evening. The boat that the men had been traveling in was found abandoned along the Australian coast. Reports indicate that a farmer discovered the ship. Inside were 5 bags of clothes and a notebook that belonged to Lamont. The weather that day was noted as unremarkable, and the conditions at sea were fair and clear. So what happened? There was no damage to the boat to suggest that rocks or a strong current had hit the men. Experts carefully examined the boat and came to a sudden conclusion. Whatever had damaged the boat had come from the inside, not the outside. The anchor and stern line were missing from the boat, and there was no sign of Lamont or his crew. Search parties were sent to look for Lamont and his men, but no sign of them was ever found. To this day, nobody really knows what happened aboard the ship and what happened to those men. 18-year-old Patricia Marie Small was coming to the end of her academic career in 2002. Patricia attended Liberty High School in Liberty, Texas, and was said to be a bright and outgoing young woman. She was very close to her friends and family and was beginning to plan her future. Patricia had several conversations with her friends and family about whether college was on the cards or whether she wanted to go in a different direction. Unfortunately, Patricia would never be able to fulfill her dreams when she mysteriously disappeared. A family member last saw Patricia after they dropped her off at Liberty High School on the 2400 block of Beaumont Avenue in Liberty on May 11, 2002. Patricia had only been in Liberty for a few months, having grown up in China, Texas. When she failed to return home that afternoon, her family reported her missing. However, according to Patricia's friends, the Liberty Police Department's response was lackluster. Her friends alleged that there was no search party, and Patricia's case failed to break into mainstream news. Since 2002, there's been little progress in Patricia's case, and her family desperately want her home. Patricia Marie Small is described as a white female with brown hair, blue eyes, 5'6" to 5'9", and 110 to 125 pounds. Anyone with information is asked to contact Lieutenant Elaine Taylor of the Liberty Police Department at 936-336-5666, quoting case number 022463. Number 9. 18-year-old John J. Ashley Jr. was last seen on December 14, 1971, in Wilmington, Delaware. That afternoon, Jay finished school and headed to basketball practice at the local YMCA. After practice, Jay intended to purchase a Christmas gift for his girlfriend Valerie, with the $45 that his grandmother gave him. Jay was known to be a happy and outgoing young man, and those in the community held a lot of respect and admiration for him. Once basketball practice was over, Jay and his friends, who had been accused of being in a gang called the Stallions, headed to a pool room in Curlett Street to make the most of their evening. Jay left the pool room between 8 p.m. and 10 p.m., parting ways with his friends at 22nd Street and Locust Street. It's believed that Jay was heading towards his home at 427 East 35th Street, but unfortunately, he never made it. The walk from where Jay was last seen to his home was just about 12 blocks. It would take weeks for the Wilmington Police Department to be alerted to Jay's disappearance. For unknown reasons, Jay's mother did not report him missing when he failed to return home that night, and she only realized something was wrong when Jay failed to attend his father's funeral in January of 1972. Following this, she alerted the police, who initially believed that Jay had disappeared of his own accord. Another boy, Leroy Ricky Morgan, also disappeared on December 14, 1971. And it's been said that the two men were friends and also associated with the same people. Unfortunately, Ricky's body would be found in 1972, and Jay's body has never been located. If still alive today, Jay would be 69 years old. John J. Ashley Jr. is described as a black male with black hair, brown eyes, 5'4" and 130 pounds. Anyone with information is asked to contact the Wilmington Police Department at 302-654-5151, quoting case number 3853. Number 8. 59-year-old Jean Josephine McIntyre was amid a divorce and a property settlement with their husband. Unfortunately, little information about Jean exists. The only details we have are about her disappearance. According to NamUs, Jean was last seen on April 13, 1974, at her home in Stuart, Florida. She was reported missing on April 15th when she failed to contact her family. The Martin County Sheriff's Office responded to the incident and discovered that Jean had left her dentures behind at her home in the 40 block of South Seawall Road. On April 16th, 1974, investigators discovered Jean's abandoned car in what's been described as a remote area in northern St. Lucie County. There have been very few details released in Jean's case, and if still alive today, she'd be 108 years old. Jean Josephine McIntyre is described as a white female with blonde hair, green eyes, 5'1" to 5'2", and 110 to 120 pounds. Anyone with information is asked to contact Detective Ingrid Faison of the Martin County Sheriff's Office at 772-220-7087, quoting case number 1974-4108. Number 7. 47-year-old Essie Margaret Hyatt was last seen leaving the Rusty Jack's bar where she worked on February 13, 1978. The bar, located in Oroville, California, was close to Essie's home, and she would often drive to and from work in her 1975 Oldsmobile. Sometime between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m., Essie left Rusty Jack's bar and was never seen or heard from again. She failed to return home, and later that day, her family reported her missing to the Butte County Sheriff's Office. According to reports, Essie's beloved Oldsmobile was found abandoned and wrecked on Palermo Honeycutt Road shortly before she disappeared. The car had been driven into a ditch, and items belonging to Jessie were located on the ground near the car. Investigators have speculated that Essie may not have been in control of the vehicle when it crashed. Since 1978, there's been little movement in Essie's case. The only named suspect at this moment is Marvin Gale Owens. The pair shared mutual friends, and in 2015, he was convicted for taking the life of Deborah Owens, his wife. In a shocking twist, Marvin would receive a lesser charge of voluntary manslaughter and was sentenced to just 4 years in prison. Investigators are still looking into this possible link between Essie and Marvin. Essie Margaret Hyatt is described as a white female with graying brown hair, green eyes, 5'5" and 130 pounds. Anyone with information is asked to contact Detective R.J. Freeman of the Butte County Sheriff's Office at 530-538-7434, quoting case number 7811872. Number 6. 21-year-old Rebecca Jean Dunn was last seen sometime in April of 1979 in San Diego, California. In early 1979, Rebecca was in Las Vegas, Nevada, her hometown. That was until she, a friend, and 2 unidentified men decided to travel to San Diego. According to the Charlie Project, one of these 2 men was their pimp, and the 2 went to California to engage in street work. Rebecca would also use the names Babette Powers and Sandy Long. Shortly after arriving in San Diego, Rebecca disappeared and hasn't been seen or heard from since. The female friend that she traveled with returned to Las Vegas, and Rebecca was reported missing in late 1979. Unfortunately, very few details are available in this case, and investigators have speculated that Rebecca met with foul play. Rebecca Jean Dunn is described as a white female with blonde or strawberry blonde hair, green-blue eyes, 5'8" to 5'9", and 150 to 179 pounds. Anyone with information is asked to contact Matt Downing of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department at 702-828-3111, quoting case number 970-719-1319. Number 5. 37-year-old Wilfred Fred King III was last seen at the home that he built on Jericho Road in Essex, Vermont. Wilfred was incredibly proud of the home that he had built for himself, as he built a property so that his parents could live next door. Despite outward appearances, trouble was brewing in the King family. Wilfred and his wife Diane were in the process of getting divorced. October 24, 1980 was shaping up to be an unremarkable day for Wilfred. At around 5 p.m., he received a phone call that he had been anticipating, and once the conversation was over, he readied himself for an evening of hunting. At around 7 p.m., Wilfred left his home never to return. When there was no sign of Wilfred by the following day, his concerned parents called the Essex Police Department. Wilfred's parents had become concerned in recent months as Wilfred had been receiving threats. They warned him not to go anywhere alone, but he didn't heed this warning. Shortly after Wilfred disappeared, his red-stained crutches, which he needed to help him walk, were found in a field in Colchester, Vermont, around 9 miles from the family home. In 1978, Wilfred was in an almost fatal car crash, which left him in a coma for several weeks. This crash also hindered his ability to walk, and he heavily relied on his metal crutches to get around. So how had they ended up 9 miles away? His family were deeply concerned, and the search for Wilfred continued. In the wake of Wilfred's disappearance, his soon-to-be ex-wife, Diane, began filing motions to become the sole owner of his estate, taking his business and property. Luckily, Wilfred's parents countered these motions and were granted sole ownership of their son's estate in absence. Wilfred's eldest son, Joey, was also very vocal about his mother's bizarre behavior. He told his grandparents that his mother's new friends damaged his father's property and that he was worried. Joey and his grandparents believed that Diane had been involved in Wilfred's disappearance, whether directly or by proxy. 3 weeks after Wilfred disappeared, his white Chevrolet Blazer was found abandoned and burnt out at the Oak Hill gravel pit on West Oak Hill Road, 8 miles from the family home in Essex. There was no sign of Wilfred in the car. If still alive today, Wilfred would be 79 years old. Wilfred Fred King III is described as a white male with brown hair, brown eyes, 5'3" to 5'5", and 130 to 140 pounds. Anyone with information is asked to contact Chief Rick Gary of the Essex Police Department at 802-879-4923, quoting case number 80-3337. Number 4. 47-year-old Cynthia R Jabor was last seen on October 5, 1980 in Las Vegas, Nevada. At the time of her disappearance, Cynthia was in a relationship with Robert Weeks, and the relationship was described as being on and off. Unfortunately, there's no information about Cynthia, and we don't know what she was like in life. According to her friends, though, Robert was extremely possessive and jealous during the relationship. Shortly before she disappeared, she intended to leave Robert for good. Unfortunately, Cynthia would not get that chance, and she was reported missing on October 7, 1980, when she failed to make contact with her friends or family. The Las Vegas Metropolitan Police responded to the incident, and upon searching her apartment, they found no clues. Days later, investigators found Cynthia's car abandoned at the Caesars Palace Hotel. There's been no activity on her bank accounts or social security number, and according to the Charlie Project, she left behind a substantial sum of money, about $47,000, which adjusted for inflation is $170,000. Robert Weeks, Cynthia's possessive on-again, off-again boyfriend, was questioned and investigators were wary of his story. When they dug into his history, they discovered that his wife, Patricia, disappeared mysteriously in 1968. Another girlfriend of Robert's, Carol Ann Riley, also disappeared in 1986 after planning to end their relationship with him. In 1988, Robert Weeks was captured after going on the run and was arrested for taking the lives of Patricia Weeks, his ex-wife, and Cynthia Jabor. Robert Weeks became the first person in Nevada's history to be convicted without a body, and in a cruel twist, he would never give up the locations of his victims. Robert passed away in 1996, taking all of his secrets to the grave. Cynthia R Jabor is described as a white female with blonde hair, blue eyes, 5'6" and 125 pounds. Anyone with information is asked to contact Sergeant Matt Downing of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department at 702-828-3111. Number 3. 73-year-old Jack Alden Walcott was last seen on Sterling Avenue in Brockway, Wisconsin on March 12, 1981. Witnesses would later tell the Jackson County Sheriff's Office that Jack was in the passenger seat of his gold 1976 Dodge Colt and was possibly in the company of 3 other men. Shortly after Jack was reported missing, his beloved Dodge Colt was discovered in the driveway of his home, but there was no sign of Jack. According to official reports, red stains were found on the passenger seat, and investigators believe that he met with foul play. An extensive search for Jack has taken place, but investigators have never uncovered who Jack was with that evening or where his body is. Jack Alden Walcott is described as a white male with gray hair, blue eyes, 5'7" and 260 pounds. Anyone with information is asked to contact the Jackson County Sheriff's Office at 715-284-5357, quoting case number 81507. Number 2. 21-year-old Dale Eugene Kelly was last seen at his Carmichael, California home on May 20th, 1981. The day for Dale started as usual, and at around 8 a.m., he called his girlfriend, letting her know that he was on his way to visit her in Los Angeles, California, around 396 miles away. Dale hopped into his distinctive orange 1976 Toyota Celica and headed for his girlfriend's home, but sadly, Dale would never arrive. He was reported missing later by his roommate, who had received several calls from Dale's worried girlfriend. An extensive search was conducted, and investigators began questioning whether Dale had even made it out of the house that morning. 3 weeks later, investigators would find Dale's bright orange Toyota Celica abandoned in New Orleans, Louisiana. Foul play is heavily suspected, but as it stands, there are no people of interest. Dale Eugene Kelly is described as a white male with brown hair, green eyes, 5'10" and 165 pounds. Anyone with information is asked to contact Deputy Sheriff Christine Neeland of the Sacramento County Sheriff's Office at 916-874-5115, quoting case number 81041-416. Number 1. 32-year-old Florence Ann Coker was last seen at her home in Crystal River, Florida on July 18, 1981. According to Florence's husband, on the day of her disappearance, the pair had an argument, and Florence grabbed $1,000, her makeup, and some clothes, and left the home in a fit of rage. After this, he's never seen or heard from his wife again. When she failed to return home by July 20th, 1981, she was reported missing to the Citrus County Sheriff's Office. A search ensued, and on July 29th, 1981, Florence's husband discovered her bronze 1979 Chevrolet Malibu that had been abandoned near the Bayfront Center in St. Petersburg, Florida, around 95 miles from her home in Crystal River. Florence's family does not believe that she would leave voluntarily, as she has a son from a previous relationship and her father was suffering from ill health at the time. The Doe Network also reported that the Cokers had been married for 18 months when Florence disappeared. Florence Ann Coker is described as a white female with brown hair, brown eyes, 5'6" and 125 pounds. Anyone with information is asked to contact Detective Christopher Holloway of the Citrus County Sheriff's Office at 352-726-1121, quoting case number 818513. Tucked away in Bolivia lies one of the most magnificent and oldest examples of architecture. Pumapunku is an ancient archaeological site that has attracted experts and tourists alike. Scientists used radiocarbon dating on the structures and found that they were likely from between 500 BC and 600 BC. This is not where the mystery lies, though. We know that the Incas conquered this land and Pumapunku, but when they arrived, these magnificent stone structures were already standing. The burning question on everyone's lips is how? How could this ancient civilization put together these grand stone buildings and structures without leaving behind so much as a chisel mark? Some of these structures weigh over 800 tons and are perfectly placed together as if by magic. Experts have been digging and excavating the area for decades, and so far, nobody has been able to replicate the delicate work performed at Pumapunku. Experts now wonder how an ancient civilization was capable of such sophisticated handiwork and how it wasn't passed on to other societies. Number 9. In the 1930s, intrepid explorers making their way through Laos uncovered one of the most bizarre archaeological sites ever. Sitting on the plain are over 3,000 stone jugs, which are around 3 meters tall and can weigh several tons. This discovery shook up people's thoughts about ancient civilizations in Asia, and the investigation began. A survey of these jars found that they were mostly made from sandstone, granite, and limestone, which is significantly harder to work with. Experts initially believed that the jars were likely from the Iron Age, 500 BC to 500 AD. However, more modern studies have estimated that they're likely 3,000 years old. While experts were able to uncover how they were made, they're yet to work out why. One theory is that these jugs were made to catch rainwater. Another idea is that they were used in funerals, and many jugs have human remains buried near them. Until new evidence comes to light, the plain of 3,000 jars will remain a mystery. Number 8. Everyone has heard of the infamous Nazca Lines in Peru, but did you know that Bolivia has a similar archaeological mystery? The Sahuama Lines in western Bolivia are perfectly straight lines between 1 and 3 meters wide and can run for kilometers. The longest line continually runs for 20 kilometers and remains perfectly straight no matter the obstacle. Following their discovery, scientists mapped the Sahuama Lines and discovered that they spanned a whopping 22,000 square kilometers, causing experts to wonder about their purpose. These lines were made by dragging rocks across the surface of the ground, causing the light soil underneath to peek through. But despite the sheer size of the lines, very little research has been conducted at this site. The Nazca Lines in Peru get most of the spotlight, and scientists are left in the dark about the Sahuama Lines. Number 7. In Gozo, on the island of Malta, you'll find the Ggantisha temples, a mystery that has baffled experts for centuries. In the 1820s, explorers landed on the island and immediately began searching the temples. It wasn't until 100 years later, in the 1920s, that real excavation work began and experts began uncovering this Maltese mystery. There are 2 temples, the North Temple, dated to 3000 BC, and the South Temple, dated to 3500 BC. According to experts, these temples were constructed around the time of Stonehenge, which makes them all around 6,000 years old. Therefore, these temples may be some of the oldest standing structures in the world, and scientists could learn a lot from these buildings. At this moment in time, experts are still unclear why the temples were built, although as the name suggests, they were likely places of worship. Scientists are now working to uncover who lived here and precisely who they were praying to. Number 6. In 2010, archaeologists in Sweden began excavating an area known as Sandbyborg on the Swedish island of Åland. While excavating, the group came across an Iron Age ring fort and discovered something incredible. Beneath them lay a human skeleton away from known burial sites. Experts wondered why the body had not been laid to rest in a proper ceremonial way. That was until they continued to excavate the area and found more bodies. These skeletons showed signs of being attacked with swords and axes. According to reports, Swedish archaeologists had uncovered around 26 people buried in random spots around Sandbyborg. All of them bore signs of being attacked with a weapon, and the scientists realized that someone had come through and taken their lives in a bold attack. Evidence of half-eaten fish were found, suggesting that the attack was a complete surprise. Experts still don't know who the attackers were or why they struck. The incident at Sandbyborg continues to baffle experts. Number 5. Nestled on the island of Sardinia lay relics of a past civilization known as the Nuragic civilization. Unfortunately, only a little is known about these indigenous peoples, and all we have left are the structures that they built. Researchers have uncovered 7,000 Neragi structures that can stand as high as 90 feet tall, with complex designs and roof terraces. Experts have differing views on the purpose of these grand towers, and although over 7,000 have been discovered, it's believed that there were thousands more created. Some experts believe that these Neragi towers were central hubs for the indigenous people that lived there, serving as home and as protection from outside invaders. With a 90-foot tall structure, it would be easy for them to see the lay of the land and warn others about an impending attack from the ocean. The Neragi left behind little else than these towers. There are no documents or scrolls to tell us about their lives, and all experts can do is speculate. Number 4. In 1761, the Octavius ship, with 28 men aboard and the captain, set sail from England bound for China. The voyage took a while, but thankfully the ship arrived in China in one piece. As the crew departed for a well-earned rest, the cargo they had been carrying was collected by buyers and taken inland. Days later, the crew were ready to return to England. Octavius set sail. At first, everything was going as planned. That was until the captain noticed that the sea was unseasonably hot. Not wanting to tackle the heat for several thousand miles, the captain took a detour. This detour unknowingly led the Octavius into the Northwest Passage, which spans around the north of Canada and into the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans. While the captain thought that he had escaped one severe weather pattern, he had just encountered another. The waters were choppy and cold, with those on the boat being hit with blasts of ice and wind. This detour led the group astray, and the captain and his crew could no longer survive on the boat. As temperatures dipped into the negatives, people began to fade away, curled up on their seats and beds. The ship would disappear into the ocean. That was until 1775, 14 years after the boat's mysterious disappearance, when it was discovered off the coast of Greenland. A whaling ship, the Herald, was fishing off the coast when they found the boat encapsulated in ice. When the men from the Herald boarded the Octavius, they discovered something terrifying. All 28 men aboard and the captain had been frozen in time. Many of them were sitting or lying where they had worked and lived. The captain's log was discovered, and the last entry noted that the ship was 250 miles north of Alaska. So how had the ship made it to the west coast of Greenland if no one was operating it? If the last captain's log is the last known movements of those on board, what happened? Why were they frozen sitting down or working, with some of them found wrapped up in their beds? The mystery of how the Octavius got to Greenland remains a mystery to this day. Many believe that parts of the story are embellished, but the mystery continues. Number 3. The Enchanted Valley in Chile is home to a vast array of rock art pieces that can be dated back to the 3rd or 8th centuries. For decades, archaeologists and scientists have studied these rocks and artwork to unlock the secrets of our past. Most of these artworks are categorized as pre-Hispanic, which gives scientists a great insight into how the indigenous people of South America lived. Some of the creatures drawn and even created with rocks resemble aliens, specifically the Greys. While we associate aliens with modern society, some experts and conspiracy theorists believe that aliens played a hand in ancient civilizations, especially when it came to building grand structures. These petroglyphs display several animals and creatures, and some believe that the so-called alien drawings are nothing more than a depiction of an ancient god. Scientists are still yet to decide whether these petroglyphs really do depict aliens, or whether they're simply a reflection of an indigenous religion. Number 2. In 1963, a man in the Turkish town of Derinkuyu was renovating his basement. He began removing a wall, and as he swung his hammer, he discovered something incredible. Before him stood a tunnel. This tunnel led into other paths, which eventually connected to rooms, halls, and chambers. Excited by what he had found, the man grabbed his family, and soon the townsfolk heard of the discovery. Archaeologists were sent to the site, and what they managed to unearth shocked the town. Archaeologists found evidence of a lost civilization that had called the underground tunnels home. These rooms and halls were found 76 meters underground and measured around 18 stories high. Experts estimated that the underground palace could have accommodated around 20,000 people. So who were these people, and why did they abandon their homes? Some experts believe that these rooms and halls were built in 2000 BC, with other estimates saying that they were created around 700 BC. Some reports say that Christians made the tunnels and rooms, but no evidence has surfaced to support these claims. Scientists are still trying to figure out who lived in these magnificent tunnels, 76 meters underground, and why they abandoned them. Number 1. By 2015, a Russian ufologist group had been called out to many different sites, but this one would break their records. When they arrived, they discovered a 13-foot-long disc-shaped stone, shattering their previous records of 3.9 feet and 6.65 feet respectively. That wasn't the only mystery find, though, and after digging another 130 feet underground, the group came across a stone disc that was bizarrely shaped like a UFO. The group said that it had been called out to many disc-shaped stones since its inception in 2004, but this was the largest. The stone disc, shaped like a UFO, was noted as perfectly circular. Some residents believed that the incident was a hoax, noting that the positioning and discovery of the stones were all too convenient for the group. Experts are still yet to answer whether these stone discs are from aliens or yet another hoax. 32-year-old Michael Guy Johnston was last seen in Brigham City, Utah on July 22, 1981. On that evening, Michael had been on a first date with Debbie Griffiths, and the date had gone well. The two played pool, ate dinner, and then headed to a local bar. But they suspected someone was watching them. That someone was Rudy Reberterano, Debbie's ex-boyfriend. Their divorce was finalized in 1979, but Rudy was known to be jealous and possessive over Debbie. Any man that tried to get close to Debbie would be chased away by Rudy. And on July 22nd, something inside of him snapped. He was enraged seeing Michael, known as Mike, and Debbie flirting with each other at a local bar. Rudy exchanged sharp glances in Debbie's direction all evening, and she tried her best to ignore his threats and taunts. At around 5:30 a.m., Debbie and Mike decided to call it a night, and began heading back to her apartment at a local motel. Mike had agreed to walk Debbie back to her room as she was paranoid that Rudy was inside waiting for her. When the door swung open, a small shimmer of light illuminated a face, and it was Rudy. Rudy began to shout and scream at Mike, and the two quickly got into a physical altercation. Terrified, Debbie ran away and found a safe spot across the road and under a bridge, giving her the perfect vantage spot to her apartment. The two continued to fight, and then it fell deadly silent. Debbie would later tell investigators that moments later, Rudy would leave the apartment carrying something in white bed sheets before putting it into the back of Mike's car and driving away. When it was safe, Debbie crept back into her apartment and discovered one of the utensils that she used for cooking and cutting was missing. She never saw or heard from Mike ever again. Weeks later, Mike's car was discovered, and the back was covered in a red substance revealed to be type A, the same as Mike's. The utensils that disappeared from Debbie's apartment were also found a few weeks later, also covered in type A. Following these discoveries, Rudy Robertorano was sentenced and charged with second-degree felony homicide. His defense argued that there was not enough evidence to prove that he'd struck a fatal blow, and Rudy maintained that the two had only argued and gotten into a minor altercation that evening. Disturbingly, Rudy would serve just 5 years in prison before being released on parole. Mike Johnston's body has never been discovered, and his family is desperate for answers. Anyone with information is asked to contact the Brigham City Police Department at 435-734-6655, quoting case number 8103907. Number 9. On June 12, 1962, guards at the world's most infamous prison, Alcatraz, set about on their early morning checks. Each morning, guards would visit the cells one by one and perform a head count. Most of the prisoners were still asleep, apart from 3. When the guards reached the cells of Frank Morris, Clarence Anglin, and John Anglin, they saw 3 peaceful men, but they'd been fooled. The Anglin brothers and their newfound friend, Frank Morris, had just pulled off the greatest escape ever made in history. Frank Morris had found himself in Alcatraz in 1960, following a spate of bank robberies and his propensity to try and escape from other lower security prisons. John Anglin also made his way to Alcatraz in 1960, and the two met up after having known each other in the outside world. Clarence Anglin, John's brother, would be transferred to Alcatraz in 1961, and soon their plan was set into motion. As the 3 shared adjoining cells, they managed to escape via grill openings in the large concrete walls that kept them confined. Incredibly, the 3 men had created papier-mâché heads to put in their place to make it look as though they were asleep. They had also used the same technique to cover up the grills that had been expanded to allow them to escape. In the early morning hours of June 12th, the 3 snuck out of the new opening they had built, slipping and squeezing their way through corridors until they finally made it to the roof. The 3 had everything planned, right down to the finer details, and after sliding down a pipe, the 3 were now standing at the edge of the island, with the waves of the sea crashing at their feet. From here, what happened to the 3 men is a mystery. Number 8. On April 18, 1955, the world woke up to the shocking news that one of the greatest minds the world had ever seen, Albert Einstein, had passed away. Albert had lived through a lifetime of changes and had a well-celebrated career. His contributions to science and society still impact how we live today, and thanks to him, we now have a better understanding of space and time. But there's one final mystery surrounding one of the greatest minds of our time. On the final day of his life, Albert was in bed being cared for by a nurse at Princeton Hospital in New Jersey. In 1948, Albert suffered from an aneurysm and knew that he had little time left on Earth. After going 1 round of surgery, Albert declined further intervention, famously telling the nurse, quote, "I want to go when I want. It's tasteless to prolong life artificially. I've done my share, it's my time to go. I'll do it elegantly." While these are the last documented words of Einstein, unfortunately, his true last words have been lost in translation, as he only spoke them in German, and none of the nurses on duty managed to remember them or notate them. So his true last words remain a mystery. Number 7. In the early morning hours of January 14, 1989, WMAQ, a Chicago NBC affiliate channel, signed off their scheduled programming with the usual national anthem, followed by an American flag. Before the flag rose, several PSAs played for the few people that had made it up until the wee hours of the morning. But shortly after the flag rose and the TV static appeared, something strange popped up on people's screens. For a minute, the TV fell into silence as it displayed this picture, a supposed missing person poster of Joanna Lopez. It had no accompanying voiceover and no details about where the woman had disappeared from or when. The only other piece of information was a cell phone number that people were to call should they have any information. After a minute had passed, the TV fell into static, displaying the usual no signal picture. People were suitably freaked out by the poster, giving its uncanny valley feel. This disturbing missing person poster would air again in 1991, with this being the final time. It wasn't until the Reddit community picked up on the weird mystery that it gained any traction. Web sleuths have been trying for years to track down this bizarre Joanna Lopez, but they've yet to find any information as to where she disappeared from or when, and searching through the sea of missing person cases has become impossible. Many theories and conspiracies are tied to this poster, but so far there have been few answers. Number 6. 37-year-old Cheryl Lynn Carter was last seen on September 7, 1982 in Sonoma County, California. Cheryl's children, who are now grown up with families of their own, would tell the media that morning their mother saw them off to school as usual. When they returned in the afternoon, she was nowhere to be found, and they called the Sonoma County Sheriff's Office to report her missing. The school's administration told investigators that around dinner time, Cheryl had arrived at the school to drop off her children's lunchboxes, as she'd forgotten them that morning. This gave police a time frame to work with, but this brought about few clues. The idea that Cheryl had disappeared of her own accord went out the window after discovering that her ID and bank cards were found in the home. Serial killer Joseph Nasso was a crucial person of interest in Cheryl's disappearance, as he was known to target women in the area at the time. Nasso kept a handwritten log of all of his victims, with one entry stating, quote, "Girl near Healdsburg, Mendocino County." Investigators heavily suspected that this corresponds with Cheryl's disappearance. However, there's no physical evidence tying Nasso to the case. He's never confessed to being responsible for Cheryl's disappearance, and the case has run cold. Anyone with information is asked to contact the Sonoma County Sheriff's Department at 707-565-2569, quoting case number 415182. Number 5. The Indus Valley Civilization spanned from 3300 BC until 1300 BC in South Asia. The Indus Valley people achieved much in their lifetime, and their advancements allowed us to become the society that we are today. The Indus Valley people created irrigation and drainage systems and built elaborate homes using baked bricks. While a lot can be learned from the Indus Valley people and what they left behind, there's still one mystery that persists: the Indus Valley script. The Indus Valley script can be seen on tablets, metalworks, and even seal stones, but scientists have yet to learn what it says. Like ancient Egyptian, the script comprises of hieroglyphics depicting humans and animals. These symbols, in turn, can be changed into syllables or phrases that create a complete text. Despite the time and effort experts have put into the script, they're far from cracking it. Top linguists worldwide have flocked to try to solve it, but so far, they've yet to be able to. Number 4. Imagine if you could get drunk without ever ingesting any alcohol. Well, that's a reality for a few rare people that suffer from a condition called auto-brewery syndrome. Currently, the syndrome is poorly understood and is mostly a mystery to medical professionals. One man in the UK discovered that he had the rare syndrome after finding himself slurring his words and falling over. At first, his family thought that he had been drinking, but after close monitoring, they realized something was very wrong. The doctors ran hundreds of tests on him, checking for strokes, aneurysms, or anything else that could affect the brain, but found nothing. Finally, doctors discovered that this man had an extremely rare disorder: auto-brewery syndrome. While not much is known about the syndrome, doctors know that the gut processes food differently than usual. The ethanol produced by fermenting the sugars and starches from food is released into the bloodstream instead of being sent away as waste. This then alters the BAC in the body and gets the sufferer intoxicated. Other gut health issues may exacerbate the problem. Researchers are still trying to uncover why this ethanol gets into the bloodstream, and as it stands, there's no cure. Number 3. Alice in Wonderland syndrome is a rare and bizarre condition you've probably never heard of. Those who suffer from Alice in Wonderland syndrome experience distortions in their reality, but not in the way you might think. Sufferers have described having size distortions, with things being either really big or really small. Some have even said that they felt as if they had been shrunken down and that their surroundings stayed the same. They also suffer from time distortion, where time seems to move exceptionally slowly or extremely fast. They may also have a distortion in other areas, such as sound and touch, and those with severe episodes may even lose control of their limbs as their whole body becomes distorted. The condition was first named in 1950 by Dr. John Todd, and since then, little progress has been made in understanding the syndrome. Sufferers are known to have episodes and periods where the condition is dormant. Psychiatrists are working with patients to understand the disorder, and there's currently no treatment for Alice in Wonderland syndrome. Number 2. Cotard's syndrome, or Cotard's delusion as it's sometimes known, is a rare and severe psychiatric disorder where sufferers believe that their deceased do not exist or have missing body parts. Most famously, serial killer Richard Trenton Chase is believed to have suffered from this delusion, along with schizophrenia, which made him think that parts of his body were disappearing, and that consuming parts of other humans would stop it. Cotard's is often associated with schizophrenia, and the two are known to go hand in hand. Psychiatrists often treat Cotard's as an offshoot of schizophrenia, and it's a condition that's barely understood. Less than 1% of people with schizophrenia suffer from Cotard's syndrome, and researchers don't know what causes it. Studies suggest that neurological issues in the frontal lobe and other areas of the brain may play a part. However, there's been no solid conclusions drawn as of yet. There's no cure for the condition. However, there are many treatments available that can treat the delusions and other symptoms. Number 1. 22-year-old Mitchell Todd Hayne was last seen sometime in early March of 1983 in Clinton, Oklahoma. The 22-year-old had moved out of his parents' home in 1980 and spent the next 3 years traveling through Texas, Oklahoma, Missouri, and California. Mitchell often picked up odd jobs, but always ensured to keep in contact with his family. In December of 1982, he arrived at his parents' home and spent Christmas with them. However, in January or February of 1983, he left his parents' home without saying a word. His clothes and personal belongings were also gone, and his parents had yet to learn where he was headed. Mitchell's friend later told investigators that Mitchell arrived at his home and once again abruptly left in early March of 1983. His friend stated that Mitchell had left to hitch a ride with his friend's dad to Indo, California. According to reports, the two made it to Indo in early March of 1983, but Mitchell left the hotel room the same evening. Since then, he's never been seen or heard from again, and his parents are desperate to know what happened to him. His parents described him as anti-establishment, with NamUs reporting that he had thrown away his driver's license and social security card. Mitchell Todd Hayne is described as a white male with brown hair, brown eyes, 5'10" to 5'6". Anyone with information is asked to contact investigator Jennifer Jones of the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office at 303-271-5195, quoting case number 868214. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But my name is Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.